Well, you know, go. Okay. Green is good. Is that better now? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Christmas to me is very stressful because you got to do all the Christmas stuff. And you got to put up the lights. You got to put up the tree. You got to buy the gifts and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Christmas is a great time, but it's very stressful. Resurrection Sunday, I enjoy much more because it's a time to celebrate. It's a time to remember, and just as we've been saying here this morning, that it's something that we look forward to in the week ahead. It's something we continue to celebrate afterwards. And so I enjoy Resurrection Sunday much more than I do Christmas. So glad that we have remembrances of that and encouragement to do that here this morning. All right, so today's message, preparing to defeat the enemy, from 1 Samuel 17. And this is a familiar story. And in fact, Amazon Prime has that series out, House of David. And it kind of leads up to this passage here in 1 Samuel 17. But David and Goliath, I mean, everybody knows about David and Goliath. The thing is to look at it a little bit deeper and to see something that is going on here in preparation for the battle. I'm not going to speak so much about the battle itself because we know how it ends, right? We know the end of the story. But I want us to take a look at everything that is happening before battle occurs. All right? So, thing is, Christians are not always prepared for spiritual warfare. A lot of times when we see people in trouble, we see people sick, we resort to things the world does. And those are things that kind of come natural to us. I remember one time when Jenny found out somebody was in the women's bathroom and they were having a headache, and then someone else said, "Oh, why don't you take some Tylenol?" And Jenny was a little bit shocked. Why don't you pray for her? And we resort to the world's ways in a lot of the things that we do. And the thing is, we have to realize is that we are a chosen people. We are chosen by God. We are the elect. We are chosen ones. And people in the world need us to rise up. They need for us to see beyond just what the world remedies are. And what else is interesting is that uh, is actually equipped to fight. You may not think of yourself as a spiritual. Sometimes if things happen, you're saying, "Oh, I got to call Pastor Keone," or I got to call somebody else. I got to call one of the elders. And but all of us are equipped to be in the fight. Spiritual victory comes through spirit-led preparation. You think about what goes on before the battle, the preparation that we take on as men and women of God. That's where we are equipped to be in the fight. And so the preparation doesn't come when the battle comes. The preparation comes before the battle occurs. And so let's see how David's preparation in this battle with Goliath, in this threat of this giant, how his preparation differed from everyone else's. And we're going to look at three comparisons between David and Saul and the other soldiers and just everybody else that are involved in this story, but how David's preparation stood out from everyone else's. All right, so the first one is that the reason for fighting. What was the reason that they had to fight this battle? When you look in the story, everyone involved has a different way of approaching the battle. the writer tells us that when Goliath came out, and he was what, 9 feet tall, and he makes these threats, and it says he did it for 40 days. And if you're in the army and you're ready to fight this battle, but every day this 9-foot giant comes out and just talks trash, just day after day after day, for 40 days. He's intimidating the Israelite army. And it says that Saul and his army are dismayed and terrified, because here's this 9-foot giant just threatening them and daring them to fight with him, and he wants to go. They are dismayed and terrified. And so that's the way that they see the battle. They just can't do anything. They feel like they're incapable. There's nothing they can do. Now Goliath, he sees it as personal. He says, "Why don't you come and fight me?" And he is putting himself up against the Israelite army. And so Goliath takes a personal view to it. He wants to be the one who wins the battle. And so that's his stance. And then the army, the Israelite army, the same thing every day. They go out to the battle line, and they know what's going to happen, but they do this every day. They go out there, and they just kind of wait for Goliath to come out and for him to shout his threats. And then again, it says what? They were dismayed and terrified. And so that's the way that they approach the battle. Come on, guys, let's go out there. Let's go get more dismayed. Let's get more terrified. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. They're just going out there with a defeatist attitude. They know that there's nothing they can do, but they know as soldiers they're supposed to go out to the battle line, and so they just do what soldiers are supposed to do. So that's Saul, that's Goliath, that's the army of Israel. David is the only one who sees the battle differently, and he has come to the army because his father has asked him to bring some food and to see how his brothers are doing and to see how the army is doing. And so he comes there in the midst of the time where Goliath is issuing these threats. And so he asks this question: what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? And then he asks, David, says to the Philistine, let me read the passage. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. And so these are the words that David gives when he does go out into the battle later on with Goliath. And when we see the words that he's using, we see he sees this much more as something between him and Goliath. It's not personal. He is certainly not dismayed or feared. He is ready to encounter this giant in the battle. And notice again the words that all those who are gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into all our hands. He sees this as a spiritual battle. He sees it as a threat, not against Saul, not so much against Israel, but against the against the Lord himself. I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. He understands the spiritual nature of this battle. Now, what is Saul's failure in this whole story here? He should have been the one to challenge Goliath. When when the threats come, he's the leader of the army. He's the one who was supposed to deliver Israel. He should have been the one out there challenging him. And so, but what does Saul do? He resorts to giving financial rewards for the solution. That you will get this much money, that you will be able to marry the king's daughter, that your family will be exempt from taxes. That one's pretty good, right? Yeah, I kind of like that one. But he's offering these financial rewards. He's saying, if you go and do battle, you will receive this kind of compensation. And that's much different than understanding that the battle belongs to the Lord. Now, it's easy to default to normal things when it comes to spiritual warfare. When you note David's words as he approaches Goliath, you come against me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. You see, that requires that spiritual preparation. It requires us to be in tune with what God is doing in order to have that kind of insight. And so David was ready for this battle, not on that day, but all the previous days that he had been out in the fields as a shepherd, as he spent time praising God, as he spent time praying to the Lord, having the Lord speak to him. That preparation came well before this day. Now, what are the reasons that we have, for doing spiritual warfare? I would hope it's not for compensation. I would hope we don't say, I can write books, I can make a lot of money, and I can become famous. That's the second one. Not for fame. It's not for compensation. It's not for fame, but it's to claim the ground that the Lord has given to us. David was standing his ground. For us as believers today, we may not be fighting a giant, but there are things in our lives that we need to stand for. And I liked what Elson was saying as we were worshiping today, because a lot of times I think we take on the world's views in things that are going on around us, the ground that we need to be standing on. And I remember as a child when I was growing up in the church, when people came to worship, we didn't have chairs. We had those things called pews, right? Pews are not bad. I like pews. But everybody would come, and everybody had one of these things. Men were slowly choking themselves to death. And, ladies were all in dresses. And first thing, we would dress nice. That was something we would do. All right? And then we would sit in straight rows. And we would sit up. And if one of the kids was falling asleep, the parents would, wake up! We would do those kinds of things. And then when it came time to sing the songs, sing the worship songs, first of all, we'd only sing one song at the beginning. And people would be singing, doing their best to sing on tune. Maybe some people were singing in parts. And all that is nice. I mean, I love like hearing Handel's Messiah, to hear all the different parts, that's a cool thing. But is that all there is to it? And when Elson was saying, use our hands, and then we're encouraged to stand up. You see, that's an encouragement to use our whole body to worship the Lord. We're not there just to sing songs. We're there to worship the Lord. And it takes spiritual preparation to understand that I am here not just to hear nice songs, not just to sing well. I'm here to worship the Lord. And so that's a preparation that we need. And worship itself is part of the spiritual battle, because why did the serpent tempt the woman in the garden because he wanted to take the place of God. He wanted to be the one who was worshipped. So worship is a ground that we need to stand on. That it's not Satan that receives that. That it is something that we only give to the Lord. And so as we worship, we're using our hands, we're standing up, we're using our bodies. In some places, people are doing this kind of thing. We were talking before about some places where people actually bring flags in to wave before the Lord. And, we use our entire body to worship the Lord, and that worship is given to God only. All right? Okay, so the next one. The choice of weapons. Yeah, Saul's view of David reveals his worldliness, because when David comes to Saul, he is summoned there because Saul has heard that there's this young man who wants to fight the giant, and so he comes before Saul. And these are the words that Saul says to him. You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. Now, I've mentioned this before, how Sunday school curricula makes everybody in the Bible look like they're 40 years old, right? Okay, now, they do a little better job with David, because it's very obvious in the story that David is a young man. So they make David look somewhat like a college junior, third-year student, maybe. I think David still had zits. David was a teenager. This is like a high school kid coming out against someone in the NFL. All right, he's a young man. He's a youth, and Saul looks at him and he says, "You are only a young man. You cannot fight this Philistine. He has been a warrior from his youth. This warrior is 9 feet tall. He's more experienced. He has more weapons. He's stronger than you are. Who do you think you are to fight this giant?" David convinces him, and Saul is ready to send him out. At this point in his life, Saul is not close to God. He's not close to the Lord. But after this discussion, he makes an interesting statement to David. He says, "Go, and the Lord be with you." And you kind of hear the hollowness in that statement. It's like Saul has nothing else to say. There's no other resort to defeating this giant. Okay, go, and the Lord be with you. It's kind of a casual encouragement that he gives to David. And so, yeah, you can see the worldliness in Saul just in the words that he exchanges with David. And then he tries to have David use his own armor and weapons. And it's kind of a comical part of the story. We can see David trying to walk around in this armor that's 2 or 3 sizes too big for him. It's heavy, it's cumbersome, he's not used to them. It says he tried walking around, but it was not fighting gear that he was used to. And he says, "Saul, thanks, but no thanks." And he removes that. And instead he goes and he does what he's always done as a shepherd to defend the sheep. He goes to the stream, he finds 5 smooth stones and uses that, sticks them in his pouch. That's the weapon he's going to use. Now sometimes we get the impression when we hear that he had a sling, we're thinking about a child's toy, right? Some of us have seen those slingshots. It's formed like a Y, and like if the school bully is 3 rows in front of you, you get a spit wad, right? And you nail him in the back of the head. We think it's a child's toy. No, this was not a child's toy. This is a weapon that was used during those ancient times. And here's a verse from the book of Judges when it was talking about the Benjamites. It says, "Among all these soldiers there were 700 select troops who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair and not miss." And so the sling was like a long-range weapon. all right? And uh, they, those who used it were very skilled at it. And David, again, being a shepherd, defending the sheep, this was a weapon that he used, very commonly. And it was a formidable weapon that he had. They say that the stones that were used in the sling, we think of what, like something like that. We might find those like in someone's front yard. They said that the stones that they used in the slings in those days were maybe about 3 pounds. And so if you got hit by this, you would feel it, all right? It was a formidable weapon, a sling and a 3-pound stone. All right, so how do we choose a weapon for spiritual warfare? Do we ignore the worldly weapons? Certainly, someone who is sick, we want them to see a doctor. We want them to, use the things that are available to us. We want them to be wise in the way they take care of themselves. But, do we always use the weapons that others will use? You see, we need to exercise discernment and to see if something that the world is using, is that something that is really going to be effective in this moment. We do want to use the weapons that we are gifted to use. What I mean by that is, I was saying, that worship is a spiritual battleground. And when we worship the Lord, it's a part of spiritual warfare. However, if I were to say, I want to lead worship, I'm going to ask Elson and Grace to sit down today, and I'm going to lead worship. Sorry, we'd be in big trouble if I did that, all right? And so I'm not going to use a spiritual weapon that someone else has. We're not supposed to envy the other ways that people are gifted. We use the weapons that God has gifted us for. Some of us are gifted musically. Some of us are gifted to lead worship. Some of us are gifted in prayer. Some of us are gifted in leading a Bible study and in teaching the Word of God. We're to use the weapons that God has given to us. And again, do we ignore the worldly weapons? There was a woman in the Bay Area a number of years ago, and she had an eye ailment, and it was starting to affect her eyesight. And she didn't want to see a doctor. She said, I'm only going to pray for this. And so her condition was deteriorating, and I think she almost lost her eyesight. As a matter of fact, I think her eyesight ended up being impaired. She needed to see a doctor. She needed to use the resources that are available. At the same time, she needed to have people over her. And so, we don't ignore the things that are around us, but we certainly want to be aware of the spiritual resources that we have. And so, how do we conduct ourselves in spiritual warfare? Well, the first thing is, do you know how to use prayer? So many times when we talk about prayer, it's, oh, Lord, I haven't studied for my final, but give me an A. Or we're asking for God to do things for us. We're asking for Him to intervene in things. And certainly, we have the privilege of asking for that in prayer. But so many times we limit ourselves in prayer to asking God for things. And we need to understand how to use prayer as a spiritual weapon. Asking God to intervene in someone's life. Asking God to bring healing. Asking God to speak to someone who doesn't know Him. We need to understand how to use prayer. Do you know how to speak with spiritual authority? You see, I think a lot of us we back away from that. But what did Jesus say when he was teaching the disciples? He said, the same things I have done, I am going to empower you to do. And when we see the disciples as Jesus is teaching them, they begin to do some things that they never imagined themselves doing. That Amazon series, Chosen, it really shows that with the disciples, because Jesus sends them out, and through the disciples, they're laying hands on someone, and they're praying, and they're doing exactly what Jesus told them to do, and the next thing they know, the person is healed. And they kind of look at each other and go, whoa. They didn't know that they could do that. But Jesus had given them the authority to do so. And Jesus passes authority on to us. And so when we can pray boldly. We can ask God to intervene. We can ask God to heal. Do you know how to speak against the work of Satan? See, again, I think a lot of us, we back away from that. But we can pray prayers like, I rebuke you, Satan. Speak against you. I forbid you to act in this person's life. We have that authority. We have that ability to pray for people in that way. All right, there's a story, and I really need to write these things down and remember. I don't know if I told this story here before or not, but a number of years ago, I was invited to be part of this panel. It was for parents. They always ask youth pastors to speak for parents, all right? And so we're in this panel, and we're talking about parenting things, and then there's a Q&A time. And this one man raises his hand, and he says, my daughter came home from school last week, and she got a bad grade on her math test. I think she got a D. And he said she's feeling really bad about herself right now, and she told me just yesterday that she's thought about taking her life. And the man was asking for help. And so people in the room started raising their hands, offering help. And one man said, well, maybe every night you need to sit down with her and help her with her math so that she gets better at the test. And people go, oh, yeah. You need to help her, study better. And then another man raised his hand and said, oh, you can always hire her a tutor. You can send her to a tutoring school, and they'll help her with her math. And people, oh yeah, I know this tutoring place over in Cupertino, and they were all offering these suggestions. Then this one woman, and I don't know her, and I hate to make judgments on her, but she appeared to me not to be all that well educated. She seemed rather plain. She was just a mom. She was there. And she raised her hand, and she asked the man, have you told her recently that you love her? And everybody goes, what? And she said, yeah, she's thinking her life, she's thinking that she's failed. Have you told her that you love her? And everybody just go, what? But she was absolutely right. You see, she saw something in the battle there that everyone else did not see. Everybody else was acting according to what the world offers. And this woman was saying, no, you need to tell your daughter that you love her. And I knew this woman was on the right track because later on in the seminar, she shared something else. She said that she had a son who was at Berkeley, and she said when Thanksgiving comes, she always tells her son, you cannot come home for Thanksgiving unless you bring a friend with you. And so her son, really? And so this woman, she understood that there are students at school who maybe live far away. They don't have a place to go for Thanksgiving. She said, you find someone and you bring them home. And that was the order that she gave to her son. And see, this woman, she understood some things in the spiritual realm that others did not comprehend. And so, that's part of the preparation we need to see things beyond what the world has to offer. All right, we're getting past 10:30 here, so let's keep going. All right, so the last one, David knew the direction to run. Uh, when the Israelites saw Goliath, what did they do? Uh, they ran from him in great fear. They were in fear and they were dismayed. When Saul heard the threats, he stood and watched. Saul didn't do anything. He was the king. He was the leader of the people. He was in fear and he was dismayed as well. He just stood there and watched. But when David heard Goliath's taunts, he trash talked him. When he got on the battlefield, David was. I think we got the polite version here in chapter 17. What David really said to him, you probably can't print in the Bible, but David was not afraid of the giant. He trash talked Goliath, and then as Goliath moved closer, David did not run away. David ran to the battle line. And what's interesting, it says that David had 5 stones. He slew Goliath with 1 stone. And it was a miraculous victory. Some people say that the reason he had 5 stones is because he had 1 stone for Goliath and he had 4 more for each of Goliath's brothers. That, I'm not sure. Makes a nice story, but I'm not sure. Okay, but this was a miraculous victory. How do we know it's a miraculous victory? Because it says when the stone struck Goliath in the head, that the stone, what? Bounced off of him, right? No, that's not what it says there. It says the stone sunk in. Now, Keone's birthday's coming up, and maybe you want to, throw things at him. I defy any of you to throw a jelly bean or throw a pineapple or whatever. I defy any of you to throw something at him, hit him in the head, and have it stick and have it sink in. That's not what happens. When you hit someone with a 3-pound stone, it bounces off, right? It says the stone sunk in. And so we know that this is a miraculous victory. It was something that God himself was involved with. And he used this in order to slay Goliath. All right, so when we are prepared for spiritual battle, we will know which direction to run. Not to run away, not to just to stand there, but we will know to run to the battle line. And this is not the time in our lives where we want to ignore conflict. Because, again, there are all kinds of things happening around us. People in the world need for us to rise up. People in the world need us to be prepared and to understand the spiritual things that are going on in the lives of people. So David's preparation for this battle began well before the day that he met Goliath. And what we want to take away from this message is that our preparation will give us the readiness for the battle. We may panic, and we may have fear. It's not to say that the preparation will take those things away, but it will help us to control the panic. It will help us to control the fear. If we get into a spiritual encounter and we sense those things happening, we're not going to run away. We're gonna be talking to ourselves and saying, I feel like panicking right now. I sense the fear, but I'm going to run to the battle line because the Lord is with me, and I know that the Lord is going to come through. You see, the church is uniquely qualified to handle the threats and the attacks of Satan. Our preparation prepares us to defeat the enemy. And there are so many people around us who are sensing depression, who are sensing fear. It seems rather odd to me that when things happen in life, it's natural to have a human reaction to it. So, for instance, if you have a friend in school who has failed an exam, it's natural for them to feel bad about it. If you have a coworker who has either been dismissed or has had a bad encounter with someone, with a manager, it's natural to feel bad about it. But what happens afterward is where the spiritual battle is. Because if someone gets a bad grade on a test, they might start thinking things like, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm never going to be able to do this. And they start having all these thoughts about themselves. When someone loses a job or has a bad encounter at work, oh, I just can't handle this. I'm not equipped for it. I'm never going to be able to make it in this world. You see, that's where the spiritual battle occurs. That's where we can step in. That's where we can have encouragement. That's where we can speak into the lives of people. That's where we can run to the battle line and not let our friend take on the fear, take on the defeat. We can step in and we can show them what the Lord is able to do. All right, so Lord, we are thankful that we are thoroughly equipped. We are in a place where we can take on the things that go on in the world, and that you use us as your instruments. We are instruments of righteousness. We are instruments of peace. We are instruments of encouragement. And you would allow us to be your representatives here on earth, and that we can run to the battle line and to do what you lead us to do, and that the battle is not ours, but it belongs to you. And so we pray for this in Jesus' name. Amen.